So, a few weeks ago, I did a video on Nigel Farage's Nigel Cut My Bills competition. The headline promised your whole street would get their energy bill paid for a year. The small print said that there was one winner, capped at £3,500, and Farage told the press conference he'd redo the draw if he didn't like who won.
Thank you, Mr. Farage. On the Nigel Cut My Bills competition, what will you do if someone filthy rich wins? Somebody as wealthy as, say, Richard Tice. You don't want to end up paying all of the bills of the residents of Bishop's Avenue.
Look, I think it's fairly unlikely that anybody living in Bishop's Avenue is going to win Nigel Cut My Bills, and if the draw came out that way, I might have to redo it. What a terrible thing to say, I don't know. Shouldn't be as honest as this, I really shouldn't.
The entry form asked for your voting history and your future voting intention, which legal experts said that they broke data protection laws and which Open Rights Group referred to the Information Commissioner's office. So it was already a mess. And then they announced the winner. But just before we get there, let's just sit with the entry form for a second, because this detail got buried under the treating law angle of my first video and probably deserves its own moment. To enter Nigel Cut My Bills, you didn't have to give Reform just your name and address. You told them who you voted for in the last election and who you intended to vote for in the next one. Now that sounds to me like political profiling. And under GDPR, which is the government's data protection rules, your political opinions sit in a special category of sensitive personal data, the same category as your health records and your ethnicity. There are stricter rules about how it can be collected, and stricter rules about consent, and even stricter rules about what it can be used for. Marionio degli Santini? I'm so sorry if I butchered that name. I don't know why I always butcher these names. Anyway, they're from the Open Rights groups, and they put it plainly. Collecting this data without being transparent about how it's used is a clear breach of transparency obligations under the UK data protection law. Privacy barrister Eleanor Duff asked the obvious question: on what legal basis is Reform even processing this? The competition's terms don't say. Reform's general privacy policy didn't say either. There's no specific privacy policy for the draw at all. Reform's response was, we're entirely confident this competition's legal. No explanation or legal basis, just their confidence and their say-so. It's the same confidence, presumably, which they wrote your whole street in the promotional material and defined street by however they're like in the small print. So let's just follow the money, because there's a pattern here worth spelling out. The promotional graphic said that your whole street gets the bills paid for a year, depending on where you live. That's potentially hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of generosity. The small print said one winner, maximum payout £3,500. And then Farage turned up on St Molo Road in Wigan and handed over a cheque, made out to June from Wigan, and the amount on that cheque appears to be about £1,200.
I give you flowers, but Robert Jenrick's going to give you half that.
Here we go. Your energy bill paid for the whole year, and everyone on your streets too.
Your whole street, £3,500, 1,200 quid. Already starting to sound a little bit fishy. But then we come to June from Wigan. Farage turned up at her doorstep with Robert Jenrick and a bunch of flowers, and 20 seconds of footage posted to social media and 2.9 million views. Man of the people, cutting the bills, delivering on the promises. Reform UK's Wigan branch then posted it themselves, and their post is worth reading carefully because they wrote it without apparently noticing what they were saying. What a fantastic surprise for two of our staunch Wigan branch members. Not just regular constituents, branch members, staunch branch members, people already inside the party, people who, by Reform's Wigan's own description, are committed enough to be considered stalwarts of the local organisation. And it turns out that Ray and June go way back with Farage considerably further than the Wigan branch. These photos, thank you to Don McGowan, are from the Brexit Party rally in Clyde in May of 2019, 7 years ago. Ray and June are in them, and so is Farage and Anne Wiggedham. And so the winner of Nigel Cut My Bills Publics competition, the one that required entrants to hand over their voting data, looks to be a massive scam. Now, I can't prove that the draw was fixed. What I can tell you is that the evidence shows a competition that harvested political data in apparent breach of data protection law, ran by a party leader who openly said he would do it if the wrong person won, and which promised you a whole street and delivered about 1,200 quid. And also somehow produced a winner who is a staunch member of a local branch that's been part of Farage's political orbit for at least 7 years. Reform called it a fantastic surprise. Make of that what you will.